Letters offer a more formal means of communication than memos, email messages, and e-messages. Business letters might involve a wide variety of issues, such as requesting help with a project, communicating with disgruntled consumers, apologizing for a mistake, or making a complaint on behalf of yourself or your company. In the past, students have struggled the most with using the negative pattern of organization. So this lecture will walk through the components for this pattern, provide an example of how it is used, and further discuss buffers. When writing a negative message, you can use this pattern of organization to terminate a contract, reject a proposal, admit mistakes the company has made, decline an invitation to participate in a project, or deliver bad news about a job or someone's performance. Bad newsletters are written carefully so as not to cause the reader to break off relations completely. Oftentimes, you deliver bad news for the current circumstances only. No now isn't necessarily no forever. You might be able to help the reader in the future when a new job becomes vacant or when the reader gets a better paying job, for example. The key is to give the bad news tactfully, carefully, concisely, and honestly. And most of all, the most damaging no is the one you don't explain. You owe it to your readers to explain why you have to refuse them. And since we know the reader will be irritated, angry, or disappointed, we often use buffers to introduce the bad news. And a buffer is simply a sentence that comes before the bad news, and your book talks about 5 types of buffers. You can first do a chronology of the events that have led to the bad event. You can describe a general principle or idea that your company holds, and then how that principle applies to the situation. You can show appreciation or thanks for something the reader has done, such as being a long-time customer with the company. You could deliver good news, such as a discount on a product because now there's a delay for when it's going to be delivered. Or you could provide a reference to an attachment or an enclosure that the reader can look through to better understand that bad news. The pattern for negative messages really has 4 components, and the first is the buffer. You never start with the bad news. The worst start is, "We regret to inform you." You want to start positively. Show them appreciation. Show them an assurance or an understanding. Deliver some good news. Provide some sympathy, but then deliver the bad news. When you deliver the bad news, you clearly state it one time. You want to make sure that it is clear, concise, and honest. Now, the way that you can do this is put the bad news in like a complex or compound sentence, such as the following. My department is already short-handed, so I'll need all of my staff for the next few months. This construction pushes that bad news into the middle of the sentence, the point of the least emphasis. You can also embed bad news in the middle of a paragraph or use it in a parenthetical expression, such as, our profits, which are down, are only part of the picture. You do want to tell your audience what you did, can do, or will do, other than what you did not do, cannot do, or will not do. Avoid apologizing unless the problem is your fault. You may think that you're being polite, but instead an apology weakens your explanation of your unfavorable news. And you want to avoid hiding behind a company's policy to cushion the bad news. Skilled writers explain company policy without referring it to as a policy, so an audience can try to meet the requirements at a later time. It's also important for you to make sure that the reader really understands the entire message, including the bad news. It's unethical to overemphasize any positive information, so if an implied message might leave doubt, state your decision in direct terms. Again, though, avoid overly blunt statements that are likely to cause anger. For example, instead of saying, "I must refuse your request," you could say, "I will be out of town on the day you need me." The next thing you need to do is to give an alternative or counter proposal whenever possible. Realize that your bad news message means that your reader now cannot accomplish his or her goals. So can you offer the reader another way to go? And when you study these buffers and look at the examples in your textbook, notice how the most effective letters really provide an alternative. And then you want to end your letter with a positive closure. I will caution you, though, on offering a standard statement such as, "If you have any questions, please call me." Unless you're willing to explain the reasons for the bad news again, a more effective ending looks like this: "We look forward to your next order." And that's just to make sure that you're not bringing up the situation continuously or having to then continue to speak to the person after delivering the bad news. Your book provides several examples, but this is one where Viewscape was asked to do a digital video scoring for an upcoming video series and was unable to do the work. So the buffer thanked them for contacting them, stated how Viewscape has enjoyed working with AVN Entertainment, but that unfortunately they're not able to provide that scoring. It clearly stated that that's not one of the systems or audio formats that's used by Viewscape. And so they provided an alternative by recommending some of the other, projects and saying, well, if you decide to change your production to another format, we'd be happy to work with you, and how they value AVN for their work. And the positive conclusion was just sharing with them, like, best of luck with the video series. And this can really help because, again, this is one of those situations where no isn't necessarily no forever. It's just that Viewscape cannot do the project being requested at this time. Your textbook offered a great activity that was to name that buffer. And there were a series of buffers provided on page 382, and I wanted to make sure that you had the answers to these buffers because they may help you in writing your own negative message. So, name that buffer. You write, "Thank you for visiting our office last Wednesday to introduce Webcam's new high-speed DSL service. This is in a letter that's discontinuing service with an internet service provider." This particular buffer is showing appreciation for the company coming out and sharing the new high-speed DSL service. In this buffer, a company wrote a letter announcing a drop in yearly home sales. In the letter stated that enclosed you will find the annual sales report for Dearborn Construction. Well, Dearborn Construction made a reference to the annual sales report to clearly show how and show evidence of those yearly home sales dropping. In this particular example, a letter canceled service with a temp agency. And the letter explained that 3 years ago we began using employees from WorkStaff Temp Agency. For the first 2 years this worked well for us, but recently WorkStaff temps have been arriving to work unprepared, late, and sometimes not at all. So, the author of this letter used a chronology of events that led to the company canceling the service with WorkStaff Temp Agency. Now, in this particular buffer, a letter announced a decrease in customer service hours. So the company started by acknowledging that people purchase computers because of a company's reputation for its good customer service, and that Computer Systems Limited takes customer service very seriously. However, they need to reduce their service. So this would be an example of that general principle or idea being shared about customer service. And then lastly, a letter informed a customer that an installation date has been delayed. And so Aqualade Pools explained that it has a policy of offering a 10% discount to customers whose swimming pool installation date is more than 30 days past our original estimate. Now, the company is delivering good news, stating that the customer will get a 10% discount. However, the bad news is that the swimming pool installation date will be past the original estimate. I hope that this has provided you some examples with how to use buffers in writing negative messages